Welcome back to the dark side. I'm Brianna.
And I'm Paige.
And this is Dark Adaptation. That is right. Paige is in the house.
I'm back.
I'm so happy that you're back.
I'm happy to be here again.
It's wonderful. I'm very excited.
Me too.
And the last time that you were here, it was in February.
It was,
Which
yes.
seems like it just happened, but also seems like it was a long time ago.
Well, the Grim Reaper is always visiting, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately,
Uh-huh.
Lately I kind of feel him just looming around.
He's just hiding in the shadows.
That was such a good episode, though. You took us in, talked about the Grim Reaper, told us the origin, history, all the associated folklore, got into some death.
Of course. Comes with the territory, right?
Related depictions.
Some famous artwork.
Famous art. Talked about the plague. That
Lots
was
of deaths.
all of the death.
All the deaths.
Hey, you want to hear about all the death? Listen to the Grim Reaper episode.
Lots of death in that one.
It was really good, though.
Thank you.
It was
a lot of fun.
It was awesome storytelling. Very informative.
I try to be. I try to give the most accurate information to you guys so you know what your history is.
Yeah, exactly. And every time that we're done, like, recording, because it's one thing to sit here and, like, have you tell me the story, but sometimes I want to, like, hear it again in case there's, like, things I didn't pick up on or I was too busy giving my 2 cents on.
Or that kind of got swept up or you forgot for a second. Yeah.
So I always listen back to it. And each time I listen back to, like, the episodes that we do together, I'm always like, God damn it. Paige is so smart. This is an excellent episode.
Thank you.
And I feel like other people agree because just speaking about the Grim Reaper one, that's one of our most downloaded episodes.
Thank you, you guys. Thank you so much.
So other people were like, you know what? Fuck yeah. Love this one.
Yeah, give the other one some love. We've got Puckwidgees, Mothman. We got a couple of others.
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary.
Yule Lads.
Yep, and Yola Katurin.
With Yola
Krila.
Katurin and Krila.
Yeah, and we got a new episode for you today.
Another amazing tale. So, I don't know. I don't have any, like, business or things to touch upon. So I think that we're all just ready to hear another amazing episode.
Okay, that's awesome. We'll get right into it then.
Yeah, go right now.
This is a request that actually came from Sonia. Thank you, Sonia, for the request.
Oh my God, is Sonia listening?
She does. Yes,
Sonia.
thank you, Sonia.
I'm excited. I love when people send in their requests.
Yes, I was excited too. And so I did decide to do this because of that, but also because I started to see more and more videos pop up and different oral stories of these creatures. So I decided to dig a little deeper into them. And so today we're going to be talking about Skinwalkers.
Oh my God, no way. Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm very excited. I'm absolutely terrified of Skinwalkers, but this would have also been one of my requests. So great request, Sonia. And is the Skinwalker technically a cryptid? Or what is it? I mean, we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, we'll find out. I kind of like they're an ever-present thing, so I would say that, but it's also like a human.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not an otherworldly type being.
Right.
So it's kind of a hard label to put on it because there is a lot of history behind where it comes from and what they are.
That's what's exciting, though, is because you're going to tell us about Skinwalkers, and then at the end we can be like, yay or nay.
Yeah. And or if you guys have ever heard any encounters, or if you've had any encounters, any stories, please send them in to us.
Absolutely. Send in your Skinwalker tales.
Yes, please. We want to know.
Okay, so I'm about to get real creepy up in here. I'm excited.
It is. So we'll start with like a little bit of history. So they come from the Native American legends and are Navajo in origin. And so the Navajo people refer to themselves as the Dene, which means the people. And so this nation covers part of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and roughly encompasses over like 250,000 square miles.
Damn.
And also Colorado, I believe, as well. It's like the 4 corners that are there.
That makes sense.
And the Navajo word used is Yinalushi, And so that means with it, he goes on all fours. And I guess that is the most like direct translation for skinwalker. But the Navajo never refer to it as a skinwalker. Only white people really do, or other cultures.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah, that's just in line with a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes to have a direct translation, but he goes on all fours.
With it, he goes on all fours.
Oh, that's so creepy.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy. And so I myself will probably flip between all the known names, but mainly I'm going to call this witchcraft or witchery, or I'm going to call them witches, which you'll understand as we go along.
All right, perfect.
So it's thought that the tradition might have first started in the Great Plains of Native Americans who disguised themselves using the hide of a wolf to hunt buffalo. So they would pretend to be wolves working as a pack to effectively hunt for their community. So they could use that as a disguise. But it has evolved to mean that certain medicine men and women of the tribe who have gone beyond the healing of the spirit and the physical body of the Dene and have turned towards evil deeds and worship. And so as tensions over land grew between the Navajo, the Spanish, and other tribes, such as the Apache and the Ute, different treaties were signed throughout the mid-1800s. And from about 1846 to 1863, the Navajos would sign 3 treaties with the army, promising the Dene protection, but they had to surrender 2 out of their 4 sacred mountains and give up 1/3 of their ancestral land.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Third?
1/3, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and then during this time, many people and groups would try and steal livestock or raid the Navajo villages and ranches anyways. And at some point, 12 Navajos were captured by a group of Mexicans and Pueblo Indians as well, and used as slaves.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So like basically exploiting this already like tumultuous time for them.
And the promise of protection that they're not getting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yep, just to get the land, right? And in the early 1860s, Kit Carson was ordered to squash the Navajo resistance through a campaign called Scorched Earth Campaign. And he would go on to burn down villages of the Dene, slaughter or take their livestock, and contaminate or destroy water sources.
I've heard of Scorched Earth Campaign before.
So that's what this is. And Carson was ordered to have the Navajo forcefully surrender to the Union Army. And this is when Carson implemented the Scorched Earth Campaign.
Wow.
So in January of 1846, the Navajos were forced on what is known as the Long Walk, where they were forcefully relocated from their ancestral homelands in eastern Arizona and western New Mexico to Bosque Redondo Reservation near the military outpost of Fort Sumner in Pescos River Valley. So this was because European settlers were moving into the area and wanted the land that the natives lived on. And from about 1846 to 1866, a total of around 10,000 Dene walked the long walk to Fort Sumner. And Fort Sumner was basically a prison camp.
Oh, no. I didn't like the name Fort at the beginning, and I was wondering.
Yeah, and this was about an 18-day trek, 500 kilometers walk with about 8,000 to 9,000 people forced like at once from their homes, with the death of at least 200 people on this walk.
And just imagine what that walk would be like. They're probably not getting care they need,
They're
water,
not.
food. They're just
Not clothed appropriately.
No, they're probably people who are transporting them are probably hoping that, maybe we'll lose a few stragglers in the journey.
Oh, yeah.
Less people to have to manage.
Yep. They weren't told where they were going, why they were being moved, the length of the journey, and most were not fit enough for such a long trek. And yeah, no sustenance, not allowed to grab anything, just get up and go.
And you would never anticipate 18 days.
Yeah.
500 kilometers?
Yeah, 300 miles.
My God.
Many people were left behind.
It's so sad.
It is. And during the walk, soldiers would take a woman for themselves, stealing someone else's wife or sibling or child. And when one of their Lady Dene would protest, this person would be shot and killed.
Oh my God.
And they would take the wife.
Like, it isn't already traumatic enough that you're being uprooted.
Yep. And
then this.
Yeah. And they weren't allowed to rest.
Mm-mm.
And instead, if they couldn't keep up, they too would be shot and killed. I did read a story about a woman who was pregnant during the long walk, and her family tried to advocate that she rest for a second as she was due to have the baby, and they will continue. And the soldier pushed the family on, leaving the woman behind, and had told them that she must fend for herself now. As they were forced to continue walking, they heard a gunshot from behind them.
Oh my God, it's got chills.
Yeah, exactly what happened. So it's very, very sad history. A lot of the Navajo do not speak of it, talk all about how such a sad time it was. And it is. It's so tragic.
Very tragic. And all of the tragedies happening just within having to make that trek. Probably being split up from your families. Maybe even in the trek itself, losing pace with certain people and not knowing, like, oh my God, were they left behind? Are they still somewhere in this line? Like,
the elderly, the children that can't go on, the parents that stay with the kids, like everything, right?
What a nightmare.
And Carson also enlisted the help of neighboring tribes to capture any Dene they came across. And one of the tribes that offered assistance was the Ute tribe of present-day Utah.
Fitting, Ute.
Yeah, Ute. Yeah. Ute.
It's so sad. It's like, well, are you getting something out of this? Or are you hoping, like, is this tribe hoping, like, okay, well, I mean, we could go against it and end up like Navajo, or we can just combine forces because what
choice?
What are the choices here?
Yeah.
You just wonder.
Yeah, the Ute people joined Kit Carson's military campaign to expel the Navajo from their lands, and the Ute knew how the Navajo lived and where they might take up residence when fleeing the army. And so the Ute would come across small bands of Navajo attempting to hide from the army, and the Ute would kill the men and capture the women and children, using them as slaves and would sell them to New Mexico slavers.
Oh my God.
And
the Navajo are just surrounded by people who are out to get them.
The lands that they lived on, or / that they live on now still, are very abundant in resources, and they've cultivated it to be that way. It's in the middle of all the mountains, so it's protected. It's flourishing, and, you know, they were forced from there because, you know, the settlers wanted that land because they could see the value of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And once they were at the internment camps, the military that was posted nearby were ordered to make sure that none of them would leave.
Oh my God.
So here they attempted cultural assimilation just like the Christian church did to the Indigenous people of Canada, right?
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing.
It is, yeah. Assimilate, or literally we'll just take you back and shoot you.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah, and so because their ancestral homeland had been cultivated to produce such rich soils and to work in harmony with the land, being moved to Bosque Redondo basically starved these people, as the land was not suited for most farming or sheep, and this would lead to disease and death. And it's estimated that 2,000 Dene died in Bosque Redondo due to the harsh conditions. So
I think it probably took hundreds of years to cultivate that land perfectly. And you're just basically picking these people up and dropping them in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, an 18-day trek to get there, but yeah, like it's a lot of harsh conditions, so it does not start out good. But I mean, what really cryptid story or folklore story does?
That's why it's important to have the history.
It is important.
Build up this whole timeline. Let's see the progression of how the story or tradition or legend, whatever.
Yeah.
See how it came to be.
Yeah. And then, so in 1868, a treaty was negotiated, and General Sherman tried to get them to agree to being pushed further east into what is now present-day Oklahoma, but they obviously refused and maintained that their desire to return home was their only objective, and they won. So they were able to sign a treaty, and they were able to move back to their homeland. They had to walk it back.
Walk back, but so
home.
Then the settlers hadn't.
They decided to give it up. They decided to sign the treaty and say, yes, you can go back.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
I know, quite a reversal turn, but I mean,
I'm just hoping it is still good. I mean, I know the Navajo still live in that area to this day. Yeah. But I'm just hoping.
But they had to completely rebuild everything because they were there for quite a few years. I think 3 or 4 years. So
you said 68 they signed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so years.
Yeah, so everything that they have is either burned down, killed, left to rot, whatever, and taken up. And they don't have all of their land back because they obviously took some of it, but they were allowed to go back to certain
And then you don't know what
areas.
the other tribes in the in this area, Ute and what was the other one you said? Apache?
Yeah.
You don't know, like, did they come in and take resources, or like wasn't, if no one's there caring for it? And like you said, the Navajo work with the land.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very like codependent thing. So
all
it's
in
like,
harmony.
yeah, nobody would have been respecting the land
Yeah.
the way that they would have for
Actually,
years.
like a few years prior to the Navajo being pushed to Fort Sumner, the Apache were actually there previous to that, and they had their turn in the camps. So the Ute hadn't been there before, but the Dene would know that they could go and hide with the Apache people. So they at least had some solace in there that they could stay there. But
a wee bit of solace.
yeah,
Just a wee bit.
Yeah, until they were found and hunted down by the army.
Oh my God.
So between 1875 and 1890, it is well known in the area that Fort Sumner had an abundance of suspicions in the amount of witchcraft being performed and practiced. And Clyde Cluckhone, who wrote Navajo Witchcraft in 1944, concludes that the reason for this is because of the white pressures that the natives endured as they squashed together and overcrowded them and did not allow for different tribes and communities to have enough space to avoid conflict. This led to a breakdown of native social controls and increased tensions between community members. And this led to a rise in aggression and anxieties. And they found that the Indigenous that lived in remote Navajo Mountain had less issues with witchcraft than the communities forced to huddle in Fort Sumner. And this led to what was known as the witch purge.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Why is there always some sort of witch craze? I'm just thinking of like witch trials and all that.
It's kind of an easy word to throw around when
For
you're
something
talking about magic.
Yeah, with something you don't understand.
Spiritual rituals, magic. It's a general word.
When it's like, are you not praising God? Well, then it's obviously witchcraft.
Yeah, Satanism. But so I had a difficult time trying to piece together what had actually happened, but apparently in 1878 there were accusations that witches of the Dene were envious and jealous of their surrounding tribes and how well off they were compared to their situation that they had been placed in, and that they cursed their neighbors. Some became sick, cattle died, crops started failing, and 40 witches were accused of practicing the evil magic and were murdered for their participation.
Oh, good God.
Yeah, and so the first place we kind of have to start after recovering like the history is medicine men and women and who they are.
All right.
So medicine men or medicine women would engage in prayers, song, magic, ceremonies, and administer remedies or perform procedures to heal, prevent, and cure any illnesses or symptoms that one was feeling. And they used like prayer to call out to deities and spirits for aid. They used healing songs and lectures, aiding with instruments to push the evil spirits away that caused the illness. The use of magic came with a constant need to resist harmful and evil sources, such as spirits of the dead or what some might consider mythic creatures. Some ceremonies combined many practices and procedures depending on the intensity of the illness. And some effigies or artifacts would be used, such as unique shaped stones, precious stones, wooden objects, feathers, claws and bones, handmade figurines, fur, hair, or things that to represent sacred entities.
Yeah.
And
anything of the land, really.
Yeah, anything that had some sort of significance to them. And other times, these medicine people would cure physical ailments such as broken bones, poisonous bites, bandaging cuts, and even conducting surgeries.
When it comes to like the poisonous bites, like if you have venom going through you and like different medicine men that are like apothecary people who can just treat that and know exactly like, oh, you're bitten by this. I know exactly what will dispel that venom. I'm like, that is so fucking cool. Just how familiarized and grounded you would have to be with your surroundings to be like, I know exactly what herb to rub on that.
the knowledge that you have, like the experience.
Just like a little encyclopedia of just awesomeness.
It is, yeah. And so according to an article written by Aislinn Sanders and posted on the University of Wisconsin College of Letters and Science Anthropology, titled North America's Oldest Skull Surgery, recently, bioarchaeologist Diana Simpson presented her findings during the 91st annual meeting of the American Association of Biological Anthropologists in 2022, that after studying a skull of a man with a hole made in the forehead, she hypothesized that this was a procedure that dated back as far as 3,000 years ago.
Oh my God. Where was the skull from?
So I'm not sure where the skull was from, but it was within an area that is known to be with indigenous people had been living.
I can't believe that she was able to look at that and be like, 3,000.
Yeah, about 3,000 years ago.
Holy hell.
Yeah, and it says, quote, the surgery may have taken place to reduce brain swelling caused by an attack or fall, and bone regrowth around the oval hole indicates that the man may have lived up to 1 year following his procedure.
Wow.
Other bone fractures were also found on the body, including around the left eye, collarbone, and leg. Remaining scars on the skull were consistent with other ancient skull surgeries in different parts of the world. The man whose remains were discovered in modern-day Alabama was likely a shaman or ritual practitioner based on the contents of his gravesite, end quote.
Shaman. That's the word I was trying to think of before.
Shaman is also a good word, too, yes.
That is insane. Because, like, if it is, like, 3,000 years old, then obviously you're only going to have bones, like skeletal remains. But yeah, it's crazy because it could have been anything. Like maybe he had a brain tumor or something and they knew like it's swelling in there. Let's relieve the pressure, get some liquid out or whatever. And the fact that it had other like scarring, wild.
And that there was bone regrowth. So you know he was alive afterwards.
Exactly.
It was, yeah,
they were
very
onto
crazy.
something clearly.
Yeah, they were. And he had pins of like sharpened bone, which might have been used for tattooing rituals, and he had been returned to the local Native American communities for proper burial afterwards.
Very good.
Yes. And do you want to learn a little fun fact?
I love fun facts. Let's do it.
Okay. So Susan La Fleche Picote, who lived from 1865 to 1915, was from the Omaha tribe, was the first female Native American physician in the U.S. and also one of the first to graduate from medical school and graduate top of her class in 1889.
I love that fun fact.
Right? And she graduated from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania as well. And also worth noting, North Africa has evidence of surgical practices that date back as far as 13,000 years ago.
That's like almost unfathomable. It's 13.
I know that they had this kind of technology and understanding of the human body to do these types of surgeries. Like,
it is just so crazy because all you can really do is speculate on like what it would have been like 13,000 years ago. It's like, well, nowadays everyone has all kinds of like technology, so you can just easily communicate with people through your phone or get lost in a game or an app on your phone or something. But 13,000 years ago, obviously, there isn't like TV to watch or games to play on your phone. So you are just forced to be with your surroundings and the people. So you would have had this much more intimate knowledge and connection to the people around you.
Exactly.
And you would have had these more spiritual people or more highly connected people who are like shamans or whatever you want to call them, who would have just been like intimately aware of like their fellow human.
And it's more so too, like you work as a community now. Like then you had to survive as a community, and now everyone is like fighting between each other so much that you can't. No one has the compassion to and the concern of caring about someone else other than themselves, which is really sad.
Yeah, most people nowadays are like, dude, my head is barely above the water right now. Like, I cannot even deal with you.
We're in our own boats, our own sinking boats. So,
but you make such a good point. Back then, it would have been like, no, we are our own little tribe, our own little community. We're looking out for each other, and you would have had this like very deep connection, and just so fascinating. 13,000 years ago, they found
I know.
This is what it dated back
so
to.
far too, and it's like it doesn't mean that that is the oldest. It just means it's the only known oldest, right? So I mean, there could be some back from 25,000 years ago. Like it's crazy that of what we're finding as we're going along through history.
I just feel blown out of the water because before you had just mentioned the one that was found in Alabama. That's like probably like 3,000 years ago. That's like, oh, but wait.
That's why I threw this one at the end in a fun fact so that you could be more impressed with it.
Holy hell. Love learning.
I know, it's always great to learn. So let's finally kind of get into what a skinwalker is.
Well, I hear it's he who walks on all fours.
Okay, so what is a skinwalker? It is said to be a medicine person who is a malevolent witch that has the ability to transform itself into any other animal, and it takes on the speed, the strength, and the mentality of that animal. And it is said that they wear the pelt or the hide of the animal it wishes to take the form of. And many times it is mentioned that common skins that they would prefer would be a coyote, wolf, bear, fox, and owl.
Okay.
Though they did not exclusively change into those animals.
I see. It just makes sense because you kind of want to harness the energy of something that is a bit more stealthy or, you know, a kind of an apex predator type.
Yeah. Or depending on what it is that they're trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
And so this is mostly practiced by men, but can be practiced by many genders. Often they practice medicine under the guise of doing good and helping to ail the sick, but many times they would be called to remove the hex of their own doing. And it is seldomly talked about in groups or gatherings and is mainly reserved for people that you are related to or that you trust implicitly.
Okay.
So you don't normally just talk about these types of witchcraft and witchery. It's also important on how you bring up the topic, and you wouldn't just say, so I hear you know about witchcraft. Can you tell me what you know?
Hey, that witchcraft, you ever hear of it?
You ever hear about it? As that would be like truly insulting that someone would insinuate that you know such like devilish things.
Right.
A better approach would be to say, hey, you have lived such a long life and are well experienced in the world. Do you have any stories about witchcraft and those that practice it? Or you could even say, you live in this area? I'm sure you've had some crazy encounters with the phenomena that happens there.
Very cool, because you're interested, you're stating you're interested, but you're not directly placing that on one person.
And there is also the thought that the people who ask about this type of witchery and witchcraft are doing so because they're involved in it.
Yeah, they might have ill intentions towards you.
Maybe and they're looking for other people to recruit.
Yeah, maybe they don't like how you're thriving over there. They want to put a little hex on you or something. So they got to know how much you know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Exactly. And Clyde Cluckhone, who wrote The Navajo Witchcraft in 1944, started interviewing different informants starting in 1923. He conducted 132 formal interviews with 93 different informants.
Cool.
25 interviews that were ongoing conversations carried over 3 years. 115 conversations with 102 individual informants. 16 different white informants. 87 pages of notes given to him by colleagues. And about 12 pages of gossip or conversations about witchcraft between the Dene.
Whoa, this guy was in it.
He conducted a lot of research, and so he is referenced quite a bit in here because of his...
I have heard the name a couple times now, but that's...
his care in the subject, so...
Oof, good for him.
Yeah. And many of these conversations were spoken in Navajo, so he was fluent.
Cool!
Yeah. And some of these interviews ranged...
Cool! I meant that, I guess.
It is cool to learn. And so most of these interviews ranged from ages between 15 to 90, past 90.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a lot of different generations of information. And one informant told Cluckhone, quote, "You know that a lot of things have been written about the Navajo Indians. You know, too, that a lot of these things were lies. by people who had never been out here or had just talked to a few no-good Indians in Gallup or at some agency. But white people read those things and believe them, and get all their ideas about Navajo from them, end quote.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I had to do this topic justice and find information at the source and bring it all before you listeners out there.
Absolutely.
And Cluckhone talks about how there's no real equivalent in any other language to the Navajo words used at the time to name what it is that we're talking about. But in his research, he concluded that there were 4 different principal techniques, and he refers to them as witchery, sorcery, wizardry, and frenzy witchcraft.
Whoa, frenzy witchcraft.
Yes.
Honestly, that sounds like some sort of like power up your superhero would have.
Yeah.
This is the
Frenzy witchcraft.
This is the ultimate. The frenzy witchcraft unleashed.
Yeah. So we're going to start with witchery and then go through the list.
All right, let's do it.
So this is the most common form of witchcraft and is associated with death and incest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just getting straight into it.
Death and incest.
Yeah, there's a lot of mentions. Everything about this surrounds death, and a lot of the rituals involve incest. So,
God, okay.
yeah.
Let's do it.
So this practice was often passed down from parent to child or between spouses, and is mostly motivated by jealousy and envy. And so according to an essay titled An Examination of Navajo Witchcraft and Its Influences on the Thoughts and Actions of the Navajo People, written by Terrell R. Palmer from Utah State University Graduate Studies in 1974, he also refers to this practice as witchery, and he writes, quote, "The technique of witchery is accomplished through the use of a preparation commonly referred to as a corpse poison."
Oh my goodness.
So this preparation is made by grinding the flesh of dried corpses into a fine powder, which looks very much like pollen. The best medicine comes from the flesh of children.
Mm-hmm.
If twin children can be obtained, this makes especially powerful medicine.
Why do I feel like you're just telling me an Illuminati secret to Hollywood skincare?
How do you know that? It does sound like something that they would make. And then it goes on to say that the bones at the back of the head cut into circle shape, and any place where there are skin whorls or spirals, such as a thumb, fingertips, and the balls of the feet are preferred. Body parts representing strength and life, such as the Achilles tendon, sinew, or the fetus of a pregnant woman, are also used in witchery, end quote.
Oh.
And you immediately went to your fingertips, just like everyone else that's listening when I said fingertips.
Because I was like, excuse me, I was thinking about how everyone has like different fingerprint patterns. Some people have a swirl, an arch. So then I was seeing how many of my fingers have swirls.
Mm-hmm.
And
or even scars, really, because that's also telling.
That's so true. My pinky and my thumb are swirls, but then my other 3 fingers, index, ring, and middle, are the arches.
Yeah, they are, right? They kind of go up and come back down.
Oh, but on my left hand, they're all swirls.
And everyone
what the... My index finger on my left hand looks like a triangle.
Oh, really?
Look at that.
And now Dyson's looking too.
Look at this.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I totally see that. Yeah. Wow.
Heck?
Dyson, what kind of fingertips you got over there?
Fingertips, Dyson.
Can't tell the difference between a swirl and an arch.
Well, then they're probably swirls if you can't tell the difference.
I think a swirl would kind of like go up and like around and like swirl into each other. And an arch is kind of when it comes up from the bottom and arches around and comes back down the side of the finger.
Let me see, Dyson. What the? Why are your fingers so wrinkly?
I don't know.
What are you, a 90-year-old woman?
Do you have a bath recently?
This kid doesn't have fingerprints.
You just seared them all off, eh?
Oh my god, this kid has no fingerprints. He's either an AI bot
Oh my God.
Or he's committed tax fraud.
What if he is like an effigy and like an artifact smuggler and he's burned them off so no one can find him?
Anti.
He keeps talking about it. He keeps bringing it up.
Right. If you say effigy, I instantly think of this kid.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I know what I'm talking about. I see it.
Oh my God, how did we get here? Okay, sorry. I was definitely looking at my fingers
That's
while you were
okay,
telling
yeah.
that because I was like, this is fascinating.
It is
I'm
fascinating.
not flexible enough to stare at the ball of my heel, so let me just look at my fingerprints.
It's the easiest to put up right in front of your face.
My toe prints. No, okay. Continue, Paige. We're done with this.
Dyson immediately pulls up the sock.
Oh, I thought he was looking, trying to see through his sock.
Nope, they're all seared off on his toes too. All gone. He doesn't exist in this
Look
realm.
at those arches. The highest arches on this kid's feet. Look at them.
So high.
Walk on springboards.
Okay, so they go on to describe how this poison can be administered. So it can be blown into someone's face. It can be dropped through a smoke hole of a hogan, which is a type of shelter.
Mm.
It can be placed in food or drink, or dusted onto the face of a sleeping person, or even placed in your cigarettes.
God,
You smoke that.
they're already poison.
Just add, what's one more, right?
Yeah, let's add it to it.
And according to Clocone, this causes, quote, fainting, lockjaw, a black tongue, and swollen, immediate unconsciousness or some similar dramatic symptom is usually said to result promptly. Sometimes, however, the effects are less obvious. The victim gradually wastes away, and the usual ceremony treatments are unavailing, end quote.
What a nightmare.
I know.
Side note, I used to have like a crippling fear of lockjaw.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Why?
I don't know. I was just always so afraid that I would get lockjaw.
Oh, I wonder where that stems from for you.
I don't know, man. What does most things stem from for me? So I was instantly just like, not the lockjaw.
I want to eat. No.
Just give me this. Just give me the poison saying I don't care. Just not the lockjaw.
Not the lockjaw. So he goes on to say, quote, witches as were animals meet at night to plan concerted actions against victims, to initiate new members, to have intercourse with dead women, to practice cannibalism, to kill victims at a distance. The place of assembly is most often said to be a cave. The witches sit in a circle, surrounded by piles or baskets of corpse flesh. Some informants said that the rows of unidentifiable human heads were likewise stored in the cave. The proceedings are directed by a chief witch, for whom all the others just work. This chief witch and others leading the witches are thought to be as rich, but they are assisted by a class of menial helpers, and these are said to be poor. So poor that the sheer self-preservation demands that they work for the witches, end quote.
That was really scary.
It's like heads in baskets, like
surrounded by the flesh.
Yeah. Flesh in baskets used to be dried and turned into a powder or eaten because of cannibalism.
I mean, and they're in like a cave or like a shelter or something. What if someone just puffs that poison right down into them?
I
don't know what the difference between a cave and a hogan is, but
well, a hogan is a structure that has been built by the Indigenous, and it has a they're tall. I think they're bigger and more firm than like a teepee.
Okay.
And they have a hole in the top for like a smoke hole so that they can release that. So you can climb onto them and then you could drop that into there.
So like literally the exact opposite of a cave.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of these meetings that were taken in caves are because it's a secret meeting. So that's why they're so elusive.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Whoa, the heads is well.
Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, having intercourse with a dead woman.
Okay, yeah.
Also part of that too. So in the book, Hunt for Skinwalker by Colm A. Keller, published in 2005, Keller writes, quote, the Navajo Skinwalkers use mind control to make their victims do things to hurt themselves and even end their lives. The Skinwalker is a very powerful witch. It can run faster than a car and can jump meso cliffs without any effort at all, end quote.
Paige, I thought we were talking about Skinwalkers, not Superman.
Well, they're one and the same, I guess.
God, that's scary.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, they take on the speed and the strength of whichever animal they are possessing, I guess.
I mean, it makes sense, but
Mhm.
still really creepy.
It is creepy. And in the book, Nevada attorney Michael Stuff represented many Native Americans and even filed legal papers against a Navajo witch, which I think he is the only person to do.
Wow.
The basics of the case was that there was a dispute over financial support and custody of a child between a Navajo mother and Apache father. The father took the son for a night, and when the son returned to his mother, he told her of what happened that night. Quote, according to the son, he spent the night with his father and a medicine man. They built a fire atop a cliff, and for many hours, the medicine man performed ceremonies, songs, and incantations around the fire. As dawn broke, the three traveled to a wooded area near a cemetery, where they dug a hole. Into the hole, the medicine man deposited 2 dolls. One of the dolls was made of dark wood and the other of light. It was as if the 2 dolls were meant to represent the mother and her lawyer. He sought the advice of a Navajo professor at a nearby community college. He told me that the ceremony I had described was very powerful and very serious, and that it meant that I was supposed to end up buried in that cemetery, Stuff says. He also said that a witch can perform this type of ceremony only 4 times in his life, because if he tries it more than that, the curse would come back on the witch himself. He also told me that if the intended victim found out about it, then the curse would come back onto the person who had requested it, end quote.
Oh my goodness.
So lots of rules and regulations with the ceremonies and the practices that happen.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about like this lawyer and who he is, and if he even should have a say in all of this. And
I mean, he is representing the mother, and it is about a child custody battle, and he did talk to a Navajo professor to get clearance on what is happening.
yeah,
And because he found out about it, that curse was reversed.
uh-oh.
So at the end of the case, the husband ended up agreeing to the granting the total custody of the child to the mother, as well as back paying all child support.
Oh, damn.
So Stuff notes that, quote, not all witches are skinwalkers, but all skinwalkers are witches, and skinwalkers are at the top, end quote.
Okay. I mean, that does make sense to me.
And we'll get into more of like the witch and skinwalker and who is kind of associated with the were animal aspect of it too. And so,
I'm like I know, but
yes,
I just,
you don't know anything.
No, I mean, yes, sounds good, Paige.
Yes, okay. So, according to Native American anthropologist Dan Benyashik of University of Nevada, Las Vegas, in Hunt for the Skinwalker by Keller, he claims that, quote, skinwalkers are purely evil in intent. I'm no expert on it, but the general view is that skinwalkers do all sorts of terrible things. They make people sick, they commit murders, they are grave robbers and necrophiliacs. They are greedy and evil people who must kill a sibling or other relative to be initiated as a skinwalker. They supposedly can turn into were animals and can travel in supernatural ways, end quote.
I feel like a lot of that was really, really harsh, but okay.
But there are many accounts of the same thing happening and over again. So while it's harsh, it's not exactly wrong either.
Yeah.
And there has also been claims of these practitioners of dark magic that can cause paralysis or hallucinations, or might even curse you on the spot depending on the will of the user, with many deaths made to look like an accident.
Ooh, that's sinister.
So some examples might be if you're eating something, you might start to choke, get into a car accident, or you're mugged. So depending on which way they throw that curse or that hex at you.
Very true. Capable to disguise even that.
Yeah, exactly, right? Additionally, in The North American Indian, being a series of volume pictures picturing and describing the Indians of the United States and Alaska, written by Edward S. Curtis in 1907, who was an American photographer and ethnologist who decided to dedicate 20 years of his life to documenting pre-colonized Native Americans. And in the introduction of the first volume, he writes, quote, the information that is being gathered respecting the mode of life of one of the great races of mankind must be collected at once or the opportunity will be lost, end quote.
Okay.
So he recognized the importance of gathering this type of information and understanding the way of the Navajo, which is really good for trying to find the truth in what happens or what is going on with Skinwalkers, quote unquote, witchery too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so he continues on, quote, so ardent are the Yuma, which is one of the tribes mentioned in the volumes, in belief that their medicine men are possessed of supernatural power, that most of them expect relief in a time of illness from the mere presence of one of these sacred healers. Their faith is unbound in the belief that his godly breath, at his bidding, can dispel all mental and physical evils. On the other hand, medicine men are feared for their power also to inflict evil. Belief in witchcraft and its malevolent effects is deep-rooted in the tribe. Disease is irreversibly attributed to sorcery, and the medicine men are usually accused of employing their power in this direction. Seldom do medicine men die a natural death. Since they are believed to possess superhuman powers, all are regarded with suspicion when abnormal conditions arise. Faith in their powers never wanes, but faith in their will often does. And this leads to the death of many healers whenever the tribe is afflicted by an epidemic. If a medicine man loses several patients, his own life pays the penalty, for he could have saved them if he would. End quote.
Wow.
So a lot of information there, but basically, they're the medicine men are feared for their power that they can inflict, but they also know that, they can also heal them if they wish to.
Yeah, it's kind of like the medicine men have a lot of power.
They do.
At their hands. And it's like, oh my goodness, who are you, I guess, to have this much power?
Mm-hmm.
And, in this example, this quote, you have the ability to do both, take or give.
Mm-hmm.
And, well,
and if you lose too many patients, people grow suspicious of your actions.
It's also interesting to hear the quotes you give from people who are studying it or writing about skinwalkers and witchcraft, and kind of hearing that they're coming to the same consensus of and descriptions.
Mm-hmm. They're very similar all across the board. So now we're going to get into sorcery. So some believe that witchery would be a term used in regard to the health of a specific individual, while sorcery is more advanced and can be used when placing a hex on property, crops, animals, and machine equipment. And so basically anything outside of the individual in certain circumstances, even whole groups of people. And Cluckhone describes sorcery as, quote, essentially an enchantment by spell. The sorcerer does not need to encounter his victim personally at all. He must merely obtain a bit of the victim's clothing or better, personal efful, such as hair, nails, skin, or urine, etc. This would be buried with flesh or other material from a grave, or buried in a grave or under a lightning-struck tree. The sorcerer will then recite a spell, often setting the number of days after which the victim is to die. The incantation may be recited as a prayer, in a chant, or maybe in a song, or both song and spoken formulas, end quote.
Okay. And this is specifically for sorcery?
Yes, this is more of a sorcery kind of technique, I guess.
Technique,
yes, techniques. And there is also a story recounting in Palmer's An Examination of Navajo Witchcraft, where a close friend of his who tells him, quote, he had bought a new pickup truck which would not hold the road. It would suddenly dart to one side of the road or the other, and several times had come near to causing him to have serious accidents. He had taken the truck to the dealer on several occasions to have it checked, and each time was told that they could not find anything wrong. He became very fearful that he was going to be injured or killed as a result of the truck continuing its sudden darting. He then decided to take his truck to a Navajo medicine man to attempt to find out the problem. He states that he was told by the medicine man that his truck had a spell on it. He was then directed by the medicine man to part of the truck's steering mechanism, where he found some human hair and a flint arrowhead tied in a manner so that the arrowhead would swing like a pendulum under certain conditions. This, he was told, was the cause of his problems with the truck. The objects were removed and a blessing performed by the medicine man, and the truck's owner had no further problems with the truck, end quote.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, oh my goodness, that is really creepy, but also interesting, because you always think like, oh, someone's going to put a spell or a hex on you as a person. You don't usually think somebody could hex like your vehicle, or especially your vehicle, which is really creepy, because I bet that's like a lot of people's form of like livelihood and transportation and that.
And especially for Indigenous peoples to get something brand new like that.
Yeah.
It would cause a lot of jealousy. So, and that could be a main cause for someone else to do this because they are jealous that they don't have as much, or the new item, or whatever, or a wife, whatever
the case is.
Yeah.
That's just a really good, interesting example, because like I said, my mind anyway initially goes to cursing or hexing a person, not their new pickup truck.
But yeah, definitely different levels.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
And there is also like the idea that each sorcerer would have their own element unique to them that would help perform his power. But some might not even have that as well. So they could be like the sun, lightning, particular animals, a particular artifact, rain, the moon, whatever they're tied to could help enforce their power. And next we're looking at wizardry. So this type of practice focuses on injecting a foreign object into the victim or placing the item near the victim, such as stones, bone, ashes, charcoal, a turquoise bead. The term arrows are usually used to pierce like the skin and inject the intended victim.
I feel like this one is going to get dark.
Yeah. And so Kluckholm mentions that, quote, ashes from a ghost Hogan, beads, especially a bead that had belonged to the intended victim, bits of bone or teeth from a corpse, grain of sand from an red ant hill, pieces of yucca, porcupine quills, Oliviella shells, deer hair, wild cat's whisker, fragments from rocks burned for a sweat bath. The shooting was to be carried out like through a tube.
Okay.
So, end quote. And some believe that the wizards are typically old men, as no women were mentioned to perform this magic.
Also interesting, because I do always picture like a weird little man.
So they could also set the amount of time as well between being injected with this object and the curse before they die as well.
Wow. These people are way too powerful for their own good.
Yeah. And let's also get into frenzy witchcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one you're excited of.
Oh, hi. Hello. It's Dom. And along with my co-host Amy, we are the hosts of Horror House, True Crime, and The Macabre. If, like us, you have a morbid curiosity with true crime, the paranormal, cults, and more, then our show may just satisfy your curiosities. We release episodes on Fridays and bonus episodes every other Wednesday. You can listen to us wherever you find your podcasts, and you can also find us on Instagram at horrorhouse_pod. So, all that's left to say is, until next time, my friends, stay spooky.
I just find the name so fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Frenzy. It just sounds like fucking pandemonium.
It does. It sounds crazy, and it's like the more rare form as well. It uses plants to perform like love magic or to gain wealth in gambling or trading.
Maybe this is why I'm curious.
It is also referred to as prostitution way.
All right, let's do it. This is the sex work witchery.
Yeah. Though it is seldom mentioned and is never talked about by women or children, and is never mentioned in the presence of children. The tura, a type of plant that is commonly used in frenzy witchcraft, can be administered through food. Can be administered to a fool through food, rolled in a cigarette, through kissing, or by the victim coming in contact with the plant and the objects.
Okay.
And there's not been any mention of those that practice this that are also connected to like were animals. So it's not a feature of it. But there is mention of killing of a sibling to be initiated, and also mentions incest, particularly with a sister. And this witchcraft is mainly intended towards the rich, obviously.
Oh.
Yeah.
The incest can't escape it.
It was mentioned multiple times that it was particularly incest with a sister, so.
Okay.
And so we're kind of going to look at now, like, Skinwalker Ranch.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. It's like a more modern take surrounding the lore that is Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
And it's based in Utah at what was formerly known as Sherman Ranch, which has had many sightings of different phenomena, including UFOs, cattle mutilations, crop circles, and of course the Skinwalkers.
Goodness.
Yeah. It's
a
also
hot spot.
Yeah, it's also known as UFO Ranch as well.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, so it has a couple of different names. It covers about 512 acres near Ballard, Utah, and it sits in the connecting land on the reservation between Ashley National Forest and Ouray.
Okay.
And the Uinta and Ouray Reservation is in northern Utah, about 150 miles or 241.4 kilometers east of Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
And the Uinta and Ouray Reserve is the second largest reservation in the U.S., and it covers 4.5 million acres with about 4,000 members.
Oh, okay. That's a lot of acres, and there's only 4,000 members?
Yes. Not all of them live on the reservation.
I see.
But
yeah,
remember,
as soon as I said it, I was like, girl.
Yes. But also remember that the Uinta and Ouray Reservation holds the Ute tribe there, which had conducted evils and atrocities against the Navajo people, right?
They sure did.
Yes.
Sure did.
So this ranch borders the Uinta and Ouray Reservation, and the Indigenous have long claimed that the ranch is in the path of like skinwalkers.
Oh.
And for anyone who is interested, there is a UFO Valley campgrounds and UTV tours close to the area if this is your ideal vacation.
I mean, it's like one of my ideals.
If you want to check it out, you can go camping in the area.
I want to go camping.
Don't use a tent because of the skinwalkers.
Oh.
Use an RV. Lock the doors.
I didn't even think of that.
And there's obviously other creatures and like Bigfoot and UFOs and whatever else.
It's not even just skinwalkers you got to look out for. There's cattle mutilation. Who knows what that's from? Is it from an alien? Is it from another creepy thing?
Yes, a lot of creepy things happen. So get some steel doors. So in 1911, there would be reports in the newspaper about strange noises in the Uinta Basin, which is this location. The article reads, quote, "Rumblings heard in Uinta Basin. Strange noises cause new settlers much uneasiness. Theodore, Utah. Theodore, Utah.
You just sounds like you're like desperate, like Utah.
I'm getting mixed up between Uinta, Ute, and Utah.
Oh my god, there's a lot of U's.
There is. December 30th. Many residents of Uinta... oh my god, I'm going to do it again. Okay.
Please, fresh start. Let's go.
Okay. Many residents of Utah and the East who have been in the Uinta Basin since Election Day examining lands they purchased in the Provo government sale have noticed within wonder the occasional rumblings resembling explosions or distant thunder that can be heard throughout the section at intervals every calm day and night. There have been much speculations as to the nature or cause of this phenomenon, and various theories have been advanced, but more or less fanciful or imaginary. Homesteaders have heard these detonations every quiet day since the former Uinta Indian Reservation was opened to settlement over 5 years ago, and have become so familiar with them that they have long since ceased to pay any attention to what seems most unusual or alarming to strangers. From the fact that the mysterious noise is heard just as frequently in winter as in summer, and that the volume of sound remains almost constant from the beginning to the end of the given to 15 seconds it lasts, and that there are never any single isolated reports. The explanations of distant thunder or blast have been abandoned, end quote.
As you were reading that, I was like, oh, that's fine. Just get Kevin Bacon out here. It sounds like a tremor. But then you said for 5 years.
Yes.
At these regular intervals.
Summer, winter, all year long.
That is crazy. And oh my God.
Since
it's just
the
crazy.
reservation opened.
That's wild. And then to the fact, like, to the point that people are just like, you know, like, it's a regular thing. We always hear it. Like, come on. I don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what? But what is it, though?
Yeah.
Regular intervals for like 5 fucking years.
On calm days. So not just days where it's stormy, on every day.
Yeah. Wild.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's like hurricane season or tornado season. It's like, no, it's year round.
Yeah. And I wonder if like the connection between like the witch purge that happened in 1878 has something to do with like the sightings and the phenomena that happens here. Like, some believe that in retaliation, the Navajo people cursed skinwalkers upon the Ute tribes, or that witches traveled to live among them, cursing the Ute for their participation.
Oh, that's really, really creepy.
Right?
But it's at this point, any speculation is...
You fucked with their people.
Well, yeah.
Consequences, actions. So...
I just have like a million things running through my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if it was actually true, and what that sound is.
What that sound is, yeah.
That's so consistent.
You can keep going. I'm just like gonna have a little
Travel
like
off.
in my mind, I'm gonna have a little board with these like red strings everywhere, and I'm just gonna be like, okay, let's see here.
Yeah, let's pull more strings into it. So this ranch has been featured in the film Skinwalker Ranch in 2013 and is based on the legends, sightings, and myths surrounding the area. And it was also featured in a documentary titled Hunt for the Skinwalker and talks about the paranormal encounters locals have witnessed. And more recently, it has been on its own TV show on the History Channel called The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, which aired in 2020 and is still going.
Wow, all of these are like fairly recent, within the last decade.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And so on November 18th, 2007, lead investigator, president, and CEO of Crypto Four Corners, J.C. Johnson, and investigator David Oritz interviewed Chief Leonard Dan of the Navajo people. And Crypto Four Corners is a group of researchers and investigators who study many different strange and elusive creatures in the corners of Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. So it's right in the Navajo area.
Yeah. I'm just wondering how much crazy stuff you got going on there.
Well, if they've like made a whole group to study all this phenomena and all these different cryptids and creatures and lore, there's got to be quite a bit going on down there.
Definitely be an interesting study.
It would be.
So let's see what we can connect to what.
And most of the time, you don't hear very many Native Americans talking about this part of their culture because even saying the name might invite them into your life.
I've actually heard that.
Yeah.
I heard that some people won't even say Skinwalker.
Yeah, and which is why a lot of people use witchery, magic, that type of stuff.
Okay, yes, that makes sense.
It's a little bit more respectful than Skinwalker, even shapeshifter.
Well, like you said, Skinwalker isn't even
a term that they use.
No.
So, in the interview with Chief Dan, it takes place in Texnospost, Arizona. And he talks about at the age of 6 or 7, he would visit his grandparents and he would ask about the things in the night that would make the dogs bark. They told him that that they can show themselves to you or not, and they can take the form of an animal or a human or half animal and half human. And they also told him that during the time when the Spanish cavalry would come onto native lands, these creatures of the night would go into their camps disguised as animals and spy on the Spanish to understand what their plans were, where they were preparing to go, and then take this information back to the tribes.
Okay, that's just smart.
Yeah, so in this instance, skinwalkers / the witches would actually work and help the Navajo people. So it's a completely different relationship at this point.
Right, yeah.
before the Spanish came in and moved them to Fort Sumner.
That's right. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
I'm just still thinking about like a 6 or 7-year-old coming in and being like, what's going on?
Tell me about the myths.
Really fucking creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, my scary 6-year-old, let me tell you.
Yeah. And J.C. Johnson asked Chief Dan what a skinwalker would need to do in order to practice the dark art and the magic. Chief Dan confirms that one would have to sacrifice a loved one, be it a mom, dad, sibling, grandparent, child, in order for it to take hold upon the person and for the magic to work. He also mentions that if someone were to become jealous of something that you had, they could hire a skinwalker or a witch to place a hex upon you, and immediately this curse would take effect, and then the person who requested this hex gains whatever it is that they seek. He goes on to say that if you visited a medicine man or woman in your tribe to heal a sickness, they might tell you that someone close to you inflicted this upon you, but would never name names as to who would cause this illness, because this might fuel a retaliation from both sides to keep the peace. They inform them to be watchful in their community just in case.
Yeah, or imagine you were wrong and you're like, oh, that was definitely Jim down the road.
Especially if they killed that person and they weren't one.
And then it was like, oh, fuck, did I say Jim? Oh my God, I meant
And it's
Joe.
such an insult, too, to call someone once. You have to be sure of this before you make any inquiries into it.
Yeah, something at this magnitude. Even think about how you had said, just in general, if you wanted to talk about it, you should
be careful.
Yeah, you shouldn't just bring it up. Like,
talk about
hey,
witchery.
Yeah, you have to really approach it right. Let alone this whole other level of literally saying, yeah, that person is probably the one that is responsible for this.
Big accusations.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And Chief Dan even says that nowadays a 7-year-old could become a skinwalker if they wished.
Okay.
And how this happens is that this small secret society of witchery and witchcraft would secretly meet weekly or so, and it is in a place where they could indoctrinate you and show you the ways of this type of practice. And David inquires further about the ritual of practice, and Chief Dan says, quote, "They tell me that when you go inside a meeting, they lay out different skins, and you have to stand behind each one. And while they're singing, that skin will start to creep up onto you and dressing you up of whatever skin you were standing behind. And it may be, like I said, a fox or an elk or just whatever. And then the head man will say, okay, try that out and take a run out there a mile and then come back and turn in and see if that's the one you want to be in," end quote.
Oh my God, that is fucking creepy. And you could be 7 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Exactly. You don't know what you're doing, and you can kill your mom or your sibling or whatever.
Oh my God. Also, it's never good if somebody talks about the word indoctrinate.
I know.
Never good.
It's a creepy word.
Yeah. It's like, okay, it's only downhill from here.
Yeah. And Chief Dan even recalls a time when he saw one of these witches.
Okay.
Quote, "They would try and imitate whatever hide is on them. Like if they're an elk. I've seen an elk out here. You know, there's no elk down in this area, just up in the mountains. That night, I saw one out here and I looked at it and I just brushed it off and I thought, oh, okay, they're around here, probably traveling from that mountain to this mountain," end quote. And then JC comments, quote, "I understand that there's always something kinky about the animal that they're trying to emulate. There's just something that isn't quite right," end quote.
Oh my God.
And Chief Dan replies, quote, "This elk, it looked at me and it turned around. The back end of it just dragged around. He didn't turn around like an animal would. This one would just drag its hindquarters," end quote.
I'm so creeped out.
So as they're moving their front legs, the back legs are just kind of dragging behind them because they're humans. They walk on two legs.
Know.
They don't have 4 legs. They're not thinking about it.
It is still nightmare fuel. I'm just imagining, like, if you weren't really familiar with this and the idea that somebody could be practicing this sort of witchery, and you're like, can't wait to wind down for the night. I'm in my cozy little cabin, get my fire going, and you look out the window and you're like, fucking sick. I didn't know I could see an elk around here. And then you're just like,
it looks at you.
Yeah, you're just like, wow, what a beautiful elk. And then you're like, is that elk fucking looking at me right now?
Yeah, what's wrong with this elk?
and then you realize you've been making eye contact for a little bit too long, and then it goes to walk away, and its hind legs are just dragging. It's nightmare fuel. Oh my god, I want to see this horror movie though. No, Tyson. My name's Tip. Fuck.
So, JC asks about whether he believes that skinwalkers can only fool so many people at a time, which Chief Dan agrees with and comments that 5 or 6 people would probably see a coyote, while others might claim to see something different hiding behind the trees.
That's just worse. That just makes it worse.
Yeah, and he also mentions that other animals can see it for what it is, and skinwalkers are only able to fool humans into believing that it is something that it's not.
That makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. I find that a lot of animals have that intuitive knowledge that
Yeah.
something is dangerous and something's not right, and they can sense that.
Yeah, especially because like you're probably gonna smell like a weird ass human that's just dressed up like disguising like an elk and
Smells like a dead animal hide. Even while JC, David, and the crew were visiting Chief Dan and staying on the land, David wonders if the reason why their dogs ran back into their tent is because they saw one of these skinwalkers. Chief Dan replies, quote, "Yes, like that one dog in particular with the red eyes, I think that was one of them," end quote.
I would think that's a fair assumption. When have you ever seen a wild animal with red eyes?
It was their own dogs.
Oh, even worse.
Yeah. To which David says, quote, "That was something the crew had never experienced before. It's glowing red eyes on a dog," end quote. Yeah. And they also had a second incident where JC's daughter and her cousin had come to visit the crew while they were camped out in Texnos Post, Arizona, and the girls started screaming. Chief Dan recalls what happens and says, quote, "The girls came running in here. They were all scared, and Shelby said, 'There was somebody over there in the bushes calling Laura by her name.' It said, 'Laura, Laura, come here. Come here, Laura.'"
Oh
End
my
quote.
no, thank you.
Mhm.
That's so fucking creepy.
I should have said it creepier. Laura,
Yeah.
Laura, come here.
Come here, Laura.
Come here, Laura.
Now it's being a weird little creepy mimic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it.
Calling out the name. And it is also noted that Laura does not live in the area
Oh, good.
and would not know anyone except the crew. And the area that the voice was coming from was very thick with bushes, and you could hardly see into it.
Ew, something is just there taking in everything and spying and watching.
Mm-hmm. Hiding in the bushes.
No, thank you.
Now, say you live in an area that has these witches, these skinwalkers roaming the land.
No.
How do you keep them from visiting you?
You get an FG.
Get an effigy. That's everyone's response.
Assault barrier.
Like Supernatural, gotcha. Yeah, you gotta salt the windows, salt a circle.
I would like to know, just in case.
Yeah, well, Chief Dan suggests burning cedar or sagebrush and bless yourself in the smoke.
All right.
There were also multiple sources who also mentioned that by calling the witch by their name, by their real name, and declaring that you know that they are a witch can get them to stop and can diffuse some of their power. And another option, which might be difficult in the modern age, is to not give out your true name, as a sorcerer can hex you once they know who you are.
Oh, good.
So, I mean, we're all over social media, all over the internet. They can curse you from afar, so.
I mean, most people don't know my last name.
They don't know mine, and we're going to keep it that way.
I rarely put my last name on anything. Even think about like my Instagram or Facebook pages. Don't have my last name there.
Smart.
So have fun, because it's a weird ass fucking last name, and you're not gonna know unless you know me outside of this podcast. And like, please don't put me on blast, okay?
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't want to be cursed.
Yeah, don't curse
in
us,
any
please.
other way than I already am.
Yeah, to all the sorcerers and the witches and the skinwalkers, we do this because we want to learn more.
Yeah.
Please don't curse us.
Don't curse us.
We just want to be a little bit more knowledgeable in your culture.
Just educating, man.
Yeah, and educating the world. One podcast episode
at
at a time. I'm going to say the same thing.
I was going to be like one pod episode at a time, and you basically just said that, so we got it. See, look at it. We have our own witchcraft going on here.
We do.
We're in sync.
We're always in sync.
Let's not mess with fire and fire, okay?
Like today when I came over here, and you were by the door?
Yes.
She could feel. She knew that I was like on the way up.
I was expecting you to be right outside the door though, so I like looked through the peephole and you were already there knocking, and I was like,
Scared the crap out of her.
My soul left my body for a second.
You're welcome. Keeping you on your toes.
Oh my god. Yeah.
So that's all I got.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know you wanted more, but I mean, I have to stop somewhere, right?
I know. It was amazing as always.
At least I ended on what you could do to prevent them from coming after you.
Yeah,
or how to
need
protect
to get
yourself.
some cedar and sagebrush. I got to dance around in that smoke a bit.
Yeah, we'll do it after this so that we can cleanse the area.
I mean, at least we're already good, and we don't have our last name plastered everywhere.
Our true names.
Although I live with one Dyson, and I think his last name is plastered everywhere.
It's Wells.
No.
Don't listen As he's looking at his fingertips, his seared off fingertips.
You look over and he is still looking at his fingers.
At his wrinkly, seared off fingertips.
Yeah, Dyson, can you explain to the people why your fingers are so pruny?
So when you come here to fight me, no one's gonna know who did it.
Well, they came here, so.
I don't know. Maybe I just eat a lot of salt.
Yeah, it's pruned up.
Do you handle a lot of like really hot mugs or of coffee or pots without any gloves? Taking trays out of the oven?
He's like, no. No, he's just weird ass pruny man. Pruny man. You're creeping me out over there.
I got the shrivel. I got a touch of the shrivel.
Ew.
Well, I hope you guys all enjoyed the episode, and if anyone else has any other suggestions, I'm happy to do them.
Great suggestion, Sonia.
Yes, thank you, Sonia, for the suggestion and for listening.
Skinwalker is perfect. I would have also recommended that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good. You did a really good job.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it because Skinwalker is something that I've just heard of sort of loosely and here and there, especially when it comes to like Skinwalker Ranch. I feel like if anyone's heard of Skinwalker, it's usually because of Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
And then the story that gets told is mostly surrounding that. So I really liked the way that you delivered it and giving us more of a history, a background as to where it could have originated from. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it, and I'm really creeped out by those stories, especially told towards the end. Some of those stories are creepy as hell.
They are, and the things that you have to do to become a part of that kind of secret society is atrocious.
Secret Skinwalker Society.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the SS. It's the triple S.
It's the triple S.
That's in poor taste. I'm sorry.
You massacred that joke.
Shut up.
But yeah, so hopefully everyone got their fix this week and really enjoyed this episode. I'm happy to do it for you guys, and hopefully you learned a lot.
I think everyone learned a lot. This is like technically our April episode because you're every other month and you were in February and you should have been in April, but then I had to go and do so much research that I released a 2-parter.
And I was busy with other things, so it turned out best for May 1st.
But like, yeah, it's May 1st. Like we're barely into May. So then you're technically going to be back in June.
Mm-hmm.
So you listeners have plenty of time to send in. Plenty of time to send in more suggestions as to what you would like to hear from Paige. And like you said, if you have any Skinwalker-esque stories, tales, whatever.
Or Mothman or Pukwudgies. Any of the ones we've covered so far.
Yeah.
Or any ones we might cover in the future. I might feature that story on whatever episode it is pertaining to.
Exactly. So send those in.
Where can they send them, Bree?
Well, we are on Instagram at Dark Adaptation Podcast. That's really the best place to send them. We also, we got a Gmail.
That's probably, if it's a really long story, then maybe Gmail is probably the best place.
Dark Adaptation Podcast at gmail.com. Very original title.
And in the subject line, please put in that this is a story for an episode.
Yeah.
If there's a specific episode, or you can put down that it's like a story for future episode.
Yes. You could even put in just specifically like, fuck you, Dyson.
Yeah. If you want to make a comment to someone here.
Any any sort of submission is appreciated, and we can, sift through that and put it where it's needed or wanted. Instagram is more a place that you can follow us if you want to see photos related to this case or any of the cases we cover. Paige, I don't know if you have any photos for this one that you can send me, but
I can pull up a couple if you'd like.
Any case we cover, we always have some sort of reels and photos for it. Again, Dark Adaptation Podcast. And then if you want to check out our website, that's great. We have our sources there. We've got merch, which I also wanted to say thank you very much, Cindy, who is a loyal listener.
Oh, thank you,
listens
Cindy.
Faithfully every Monday. Loves a Cindy. She bought
all
a
dark
patch.
love to Cindy.
She is great. She is always commenting on our posts and faithfully listening. She is maybe one of the few who really, really, really appreciate Dyson's levity and inappropriate humor at times.
Is she like a #1 fan at this point?
She is definitely up there.
Oh, thanks, Cindy. Thanks for listening. Here's your shout out.
Cindy is. She's #1. We'll never ever forget Cindy. She's amazing. She's also bought us a coffee before.
Oh, thanks, Cindy.
Yeah.
Thanks for the coffee.
Mm-hmm. And
or I guess the alcohol, depending on what time of day we're doing this at.
Depends. If it's a recording, then it's
Yes.
alcohol. If it's research and writing, it's coffee all the way.
And tea.
Very bold black coffee for me.
I'll take a regular tea with 2 milks, thanks.
So thank you, Cindy.
Yes,
and
thank
yeah, the coffee she bought us was through our website,
Oh, very nice.
darkadaptationpodcast.ca. And yeah, Paige, we'll see you again in June.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested to hear what you're going to cover then. And
I'm interested too. I got to figure that out.
I'm interested too.
Yeah, what am I going to do? I don't know.
That's the fun of it. I'm typically the same boat as you, whereas I'm like bouncing between a couple of subjects or cases that I want to do. But in this case, next week I know exactly what I'm going to do, because in last week's episode, which was part 2 of our disappearance of Walter Collins and the Wineville murders, in our mine and Dyson's banter, I had said, I don't even know how we started talking about Dylan Millard and the Tim Bosma case and stuff, and I was like, should I do that one? Okay, I'll do that one.
Yes.
And then I really stuck to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the case that is going to come out next week, but it will probably also be the week after that, and the week after that.
Oh,
Because this is going to be a deep dive, and it's probably
I'm excited.
Yeah, this one will be like a 3 or maybe 4 parts. I'm not sure yet, just because of how the writing is taking me.
Wow.
So it'll be like a fucking deep dive.
Oh, so you got like a whole month for like a subject.
Potentially, yes.
Oh, that's very interesting. I'm excited. I hope everyone else is excited.
I hope so too, because that's what you get. Okay, getting a deep dive.
Get what you get, and you
Dylan
don't
Millard.
complain.
Yeah, don't be fucking complain. And if you're complaining, maybe it's because you have a different suggestion, a case suggestion, and in which case you tell us what you want to hear. And yeah, I have nothing else.
I got nothing either. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the dark side.